The year is 1968. While students march in Paris and the world is in revolution, China is drowning in its own blood. Mao Zedong's radical policies have devastated the country. The Great Famine, which began in 1958, has killed up to 40 million people. Families are crumbling, villages are vanishing from hunger, and in the cities, a different kind of terror reigns. Teachers, writers, and leaders are beaten in public and jailed for imaginary crimes. Amidst this chaos is a 15-year-old boy named Xi Jinping. His father, once a revolutionary hero alongside Mao, is branded a traitor. The entire family is ruined. Xi is thrown out of Beijing and exiled to a poor village with no food, no school, and no future. For 7 long years, he howls manures and sleeps on flea-infested beds, living as the son of a traitor. But this disgraced boy would one day rise to become the most powerful leader in China and arguably the most dangerous man on earth. How did a banished teenager in a dying country climb to the top of world's toughest political network? This is a masterclass in power, politics, and survival. To understand Xi's rise, you must first understand the collapse of Mao's China. Mao's great leap forward was meant to be an instant paradise. Instead, it was one of history's deadliest man-made disasters. Private farming was banned. Farmers became slaves on their own land. Mao became obsessed with steel, forcing families to melt their cooking pots and farm tools to meet impossible targets. The result was useless scrap metal, leaving people with no tools to farm and no pots to cook with. Then Mao declared war on farming itself, forcing peasants to follow a fake science that destroyed the soil. China's grain output collapsed. While 30 million of his own people starved to death, Mao doubled grain exports just to protect his international image. When his grip weakened, he unleashed children as Red Guards, who turned on their teachers and even their own parents. This was the nightmare Xi was exiled into, but his next move was a lesson in strategic patience. He realized that in China, real power didn't come from rebellion, it came from inside the Communist Party. So he applied to join, again and again. Each time he was rejected. The reason? Your father's crime makes you not trustworthy. Most would have given up, but Xi saw rejection as information. Information about what the system feared and what he had to become to be accepted. Instead of fleeing, he stayed in the village. He hauled grain under the blazing sun and dug ditches until his hands bled. While others saw it as punishment, Xi saw it as intelligence gathering. He was learning how power flows from the ground up. The villagers watched this former Beijing elite share their hunger and their humiliation. And in 1974, with their grassroots support, the Communist Party finally accepted Xi Jinping. Xi's first move reveals a strategic genius. In 1975, he secured admission to Tsinghua University, which is China's equivalent of Harvard or MIT. But this wasn't about education. It was about access. Tsinghua was where the children of party elites studied. He wasn't just getting a degree. He was re-entering the power aristocracy and building a network that would become his lifeline. After Mao's death in 1976, a new leader, Deng Xiaoping, began opening China's economy. Xi's father was reinstated, and this influence landed Xi a prestigious job in the Central Military Commission in Beijing. But then in 1982, Xi did the unthinkable. He voluntarily exiled himself again, this time to the poor remote province of Hebei. It was like a top politician in Delhi choosing to move to a remote corner of Nagaland. It looked like political suicide. But Xi understood power. Beijing was full of ambitious men clawing at each other. Their careers could collapse overnight. In Hebei, there was no spotlight and no competition. There was only real work to be done. Fixing irrigation, solving food shortages, and addressing peasants' grievances. While others in Beijing were known for their speeches, Xi became known as the man who could actually run China. By staying out of the capital's dirty politics, he avoided becoming a threat. He was rising slowly, invisibly, and safely. Next, Xi built an insane track record of turning provinces into economic miracles. In Zhending County, where 70% of residents were poor farmers, he implemented a strategic 4-part model. He shifted them from low-value grains to high-value fruits and vegetables. provided government training, gave them direct access to city markets, and offered performance-based rewards. The result? Farmers earning 60 yuan a month suddenly made over 2,000. Income skyrocketed. Since 1978, the region's GDP has grown over 300 times. Xi proved he was a master governor. His golden opportunity came in 2006. Shanghai, China's financial capital, was rocked by a massive corruption scandal. The city's party chief had embezzled $400 million. With the 2008 Beijing Olympics approaching, China's moment to shine on the world stage, the party needed a fixer. Xi was sent in. He performed a surgical operation. He rejected luxuries, cancelled lavish banquets, and encouraged firms like Alibaba to set up shop, reassuring foreign investors, all while maintaining an impressive 12.9% economic growth. The 2008 Olympics were a stunning success, and Xi's performance catapulted him to the very top of the party. He was promoted to the Politburo Standing Committee, China's true inner circle of just a handful of men who make decisions for 1.4 billion people. When the time came to choose the next supreme leader, the party elders saw Xi as a humble, experienced, and most importantly, controllable candidate. This was a catastrophic misjudgment. In 2012, when Xi Jinping became General Secretary, everyone thought they had a puppet. Instead, they got a master. He immediately launched a massive anti-corruption campaign, systematically eliminating every potential rival. Hundreds of senior officials and top military generals vanished. Then in 2018, he shocked the world. He rewrote China's constitution. First, he enshrined Xi Jinping's thought as permanent law, meaning his ideas can never be questioned. Second, he eliminated presidential term limits. Before Xi, leaders served a maximum of 2 terms. He changed the rules so he could be president for life. When these changes were put to a vote in China's parliament, out of nearly 3,000 delegates, the number of people who opposed them was 0. Everyone knew what happened to those who disagreed with Xi. And here's the terrifying part. His dictatorship had worked. Under his rule, while America's GDP grew only by 60%, China grew by 111%. China now controls 30% of global manufacturing, the entire solar panel supply chain, and the electrical vehicle battery industry. With economic power has come military aggression, building artificial islands in the South China Sea and openly threatening Taiwan. Xi Jinping proved that dictatorship can deliver economic results faster than a democracy. But this raises the ultimate question. Can a system built on fear and control keep delivering prosperity forever? The answer will determine who rules the 21st century. And Xi Jinping, the boy who learned that power comes from patience, not promises, now controls that answer. He didn't learn his lessons from books. He learned them by watching his own country destroy itself. And that is what makes him so calculated, so patient, and so terrifyingly effective.